The 13th law of leadership is the law of reproduction. And the law of reproduction says it takes a leader to raise up a leader. In fact, let me give you a statement at the beginning of this law, because this one is powerful. Let me give you a statement at the beginning of this law that will kind of just help get it settled the right way and build us on the foundation that we need. The principle is that we teach what we know, but we reproduce what we are. Now that's a huge statement. What I mean by that is you can teach people anything, but unless you live it, you can't reproduce it in their lives. That's why every once in a while when somebody says, well, don't you think colleges ought to have leadership training and curriculum in them? And the answer is obviously they should. I think it's one of the great sins that are committed against not only church leaders but business leaders to go to college and not have leadership courses. But can I tell you something about those leadership courses? If you had a professor that didn't have the ability to teach a leadership course, that professor couldn't reproduce a leader. You see, it takes a leader to know a leader. It takes a leader to show a leader. And it takes a leader to grow a leader. Who finds potential leaders? Leaders. Who models for leaders and potential leaders? Leaders. Who grows potential leaders? Leaders. You see, the hope of having a leader tomorrow is having a leader today. The hope for the next generation is that the present generation of leaders pour their lives into the younger ones, and it takes a leader to do this. A classic example. When you read the Old Testament, King Saul had no giant killers in his Israeli army. He had none. Now David had 5 giant killers in his army. Now, do you know why David had 5 giant killers in his army and Saul had no giant killers in his army? Very simple. Saul didn't have any giant killers because Saul didn't kill any giants. David had giant killers because David killed giants. It takes one to know one. It takes one to show one. It takes one to grow one. In this law of reproduction, the first thing we have to understand is it starts with a leader. The reason I'm passionate about that in this room today is because many of you are leaders, and I know the only hope for another generation of leaders is for you as leaders to take seriously that you've got to raise up another generation of leaders. And can I tell you something? If you don't, it ain't going to get done. You can't assign this to a non-leader. You can't pass this out in some kind of a book or curriculum and hope that they catch it. You've got to do this. If you're a leader, your greatest responsibility is to raise up another leader. So that's what this law is all about. Last year, in my leadership conferences, I did a survey. It was a very simple survey. I just asked leaders in the conference to share with me what their number one influence was on their leadership life. In other words, if you're a leader today, what I did is I said, what caused you to become a leader? It was very interesting. We basically got 3 answers. There were a few people, in fact 5% of the people, who said, well, there was a crisis. And I kind of came forward in the crisis and literally took the leadership mantle and I became a leader. In other words, it was out of a crisis that they really were kind of made a leader. I can see that. About 10% said it was my natural leadership gifts. I was born with some natural inclinations of leading, and here I am today, I'm a leader. About 10% said it was my natural leadership gifts, and about 5% said it was a crisis that formed me into a leader. The other 85% said it was the fact that I was either mentored or under the influence of a leader that caused me to become a leader. 85% of the people in my leadership conferences last year said, I am a leader today because there was a leader that influenced me and mentored me and allowed me and encouraged me and helped me to become a leader.